Hi everybody, I hope you're doing well today. In this video we're going to continue our crash course on logic by talking about some basics about induction. So we're going to briefly review what the difference is between deduction and induction, then we'll just jump in and talk about inductive standards, including strength and cogency, which are going to be the kind of analog in induction of validity and soundness that we saw in deduction. Then we'll introduce a couple common inductive argument forms that you should watch out for because people use this kind of reasoning quite a bit. We'll talk about enumerative induction, argument from analogy, and inference to the best explanation. So I want to start out just by having you consider this argument. I'll call it the popcorn argument. So my daughter thinks that popcorn is absolutely delicious, well, because it is. And every time I've ever brought my daughter to the movie theater in the past, she's always asked me to buy her popcorn. Now, imagine that I sort of let you know that I'm going to take my daughter to the movie theater this weekend because let's imagine that there's not a pandemic going on. But on the basis of this, you might come to the conclusion that this weekend my daughter is going to ask me to buy her popcorn. And it seems like it'd be rational for me to plan on that and make sure I have money in my wallet, or at least my card, so that I can buy the popcorn when she asks me to buy it for her. But is this argument deductively valid? The answer is no. Even if you assume that all those premises are true, that wouldn't provide any guarantee that the conclusion is true. Because even if my daughter loves popcorn, even if she's always asked me in the past to buy her popcorn, and even if I do take her to the movie theater this weekend, she might, this time, just not ask. Nonetheless, like I said, it still seems that this argument is good in some sense, despite the fact that it's not valid. And that's because I shouldn't be using deductive standards to evaluate this argument. Rather, I should be using inductive standards. So remember, there's these two different standards that correspond to different ways that an argument might sort of attempt to support its conclusion. Deductive standards and inductive standards. Deductive standards are the ones we should use when the premises someone appeals to are trying to or aim to in some way guarantee the conclusion. But inductive standards are the ones that we ought to use when the premises aim in some way to make the conclusion probably true, but they don't sort of shoot so high that they try to provide a guarantee. And that's what was happening in the popcorn argument. It wasn't trying to provide premises that would guarantee the conclusion. It was just trying to give you premises that would increase the probability, would make it likely that my daughter would ask for popcorn this weekend. So the two central concepts for evaluating arguments using these inductive standards are strength. So an argument is strong when it's unlikely that all the premises are true, yet the conclusion is false at the same time. Or alternatively, if all the premises are true, then its conclusion would probably be true as well. So notice this is the analog of deductive validity, but instead of looking for a guarantee, we're working in terms of probability. Now, just like validity, notice that a strong argument doesn't have to have true premises. Rather, it doesn't say that the premises are true. It says if all the premises were true, then the conclusion would probably be true as well. Of course, we also want not just the logic to be strong, we also want the content to be good. And this is where cogency comes in. This is the sort of analog in induction of what sort of soundness that we saw in deduction. So in induction, a cogent argument will be a case where an argument is strong, has the good logic, but also its premises are all true. In that scenario, since the premises are true and since the logic is strong, it looks like a cogent argument would make it rational for us to believe in the conclusion, even though it doesn't provide a guarantee. If I have to make a bet, I'm going to bet on what's most likely. I'm not going to bet against the odds, so to speak. All right, so here's a couple common inductive argument forms that you should watch out for. First, enumerative induction. This is a kind of argument that starts out by sort of listing. It enumerates a number of examples. It says, this first A has some feature. This second A has this feature. This third one, this fourth one, so it just goes through this list and keeps enumerating these examples. And says, well, since all of those that I've seen have had this feature, probably the next one I see will also have that feature. Or maybe sometimes you might conclude that all A's have that feature. Here's an example. The first penguin I ever saw was black and white. The second penguin I saw was black and white. And I continue enumerating the examples of all the penguins I've seen that were black and white. And so I come to the conclusion that probably the next penguin I see will be black and white, or that all penguins are black and white. Now notice, even if every single penguin I've seen, even if I've seen 1,000, even if they've all been black and white, that doesn't provide me with a guarantee that the next one I see will be black and white. It's possible that the next one I see turns out to be hot pink. I don't think it's likely, but it is possible. All right. How strong this argument is depends upon a number of factors, like how big my list of enumerated sort of penguins is. If I've only seen one penguin, not very strong. All right, so notice the A1 here is the first penguin. The A2 is the second penguin. The feature is the being black and white. All right, another common argument form here is argument from analogy. So this kind of argument starts out by making an analogy. It takes two or more things, and it says that they are similar in certain ways. And then it says, well, look, one of those things in the analogy has this feature, and so since A is so similar, it too probably has that feature as well. Here's an example. The car I'm buying is similar to Jane's. How are they similar? Maybe I'm thinking about buying a Honda Civic, and Jane has a Honda Civic. So they're the same make and model. Well, Jane's car has been reliable for her, thus probably my car will be reliable as well, given that it's so similar to Jane's. All right, I point to an analogy, then I say one thing in that analogy has a feature, and then I conclude that the other thing probably does too. So the A here is the car I'm buying or thinking of buying. The B here is Jane's car, and the feature is reliability. All right, lastly, inference to the best explanation is another common inductive argument form to watch out for. It says, look, there's this surprising thing that happened. And when I think of why that might have happened, the best explanation I can come up with is A. So here's my hypothesis, and that seems like the best explanation for why that surprising thing might have happened. Well, since it's the best explanation that I can come up with, well, probably it's the true explanation. All right, so here's an example. My daughter's robot toy just stopped working. So I'm playing with my daughter, the robots are working fine, then it slows down and then just stops working. Well, it seems like the battery's dying is the best explanation I can come up with for the toy not working. I mean, I can come up with other explanations. Maybe maybe the toy's just sort of broken, but why did it work initially? Maybe there was a sort of wire that came loose, but it seems like dead batteries is the sort of simplest explanation. It seems like it's the best explanation. So even though it's not guaranteed, I might think probably the batteries are dead. All right, so in this case, the surprising thing that happened was that the sort of robot toy stopped working. The explanation is the A here is the dead batteries. All right, now, deciding whether an inductive argument is strong or weak is a bit trickier than deciding whether an argument is valid or invalid, and this is for a few reasons. First of all, deductive forms, such as modus ponens, are always valid. But when it comes to the inductive forms that I just talked about, the enumerative induction, argument from analogy, inference to the best explanation, sometimes they'll be strong, sometimes they'll be weak, just depending upon the details. So, moreover, validity and invalidity do not admit of degrees. An argument's either valid or invalid. There is no such thing as an argument that's kind of valid or a little bit valid. No, strength, however, does come in degrees. An argument can be stronger or weaker. So the premises might make the conclusion 95% probable, or they might be slightly weaker and only make the conclusion 75% probable. And so that makes induction a little bit trickier. And a valid argument also remains valid no matter what premises you add to it. So if you have a modus ponens argument, if you add like 6 other premises to the argument, that doesn't change the validity. However, when you add additional premises or information to an inductive argument, it might change what was a strong argument into a weak argument. And so that makes things sort of trickier as well. All right, so that's all for this video on induction. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.